My name is Lorayne Robertson. I'm at the University of Ontario Institute of Technology, and my colleague is Laurie Corrigan, and Laurie is a superintendent in a school district responsible for learning and innovation in her school district. Now, many times in the past, research was done to an organization or about an organization. So our presentation today is really about the democratization of decision-making in a district and the democratization of research in a school district. So we're talking today about the research and collaboration between our two organizations.
Thank you. The second slide actually shows my colleague, Sean Heikert, and I need to acknowledge his expertise. Sean Heikert is the manager of information technology at my school board, and I would also describe him very much as a practitioner. While he knows the IT side beautifully, he also happens to have a Bachelor of Education and has had teaching experience. So a lot of the work we do when we work together is work done that's of a similar language. This is the profile of the district school board. It is by definition mid-sized urban and rural board. I do work for the Peterborough, Victoria, Northumberland, Clarington Catholic District School Board, and I had to say it, it's probably the longest acronym of a school board in the province of Ontario, but the P, the V, the N, and the C are distinct. They represent distinct regions, and they have distinct voices, and it was very much a part of this process recognizing that and including that kind of diversity. There are 38 elementary and secondary schools, approximately 15,000 students under those 4 areas, and the district technology plan, or the TELP, was up for renewal. And the process that was undertaken was a process that is described and defined as collaborative professionalism. Yes, I'd be glad to. This is the old technology-enabled learning plan. It comes in at 105 pages. It was developed by an external technical consulting corporation, and it was developed in 2012 with a 5-year plan in mind. And our process varied. We had some options about developing our new TELP. One of them was to continue the use of external consultants who are experts in technology and have expert technological applications for learning as well. They're well known, they're big, and they have a lot of resources. The second option was to use IT staff, current staff, the manager obviously, and learning consultants. We have consultants who focus on learning for students, and to use them in the development of a plan. Or the third option, and this option that Lorayne spoke about, included the democratization of learning. And an invitation was issued to all school board employees, regardless of role. And there are probably in the area of 3,000 to 4,000. And people were chosen to sit on the committee, the Leveraging Technology Committee, based on their region, based on their role, and based on the panel that they would represent, either elementary or secondary. So on the Leveraging Technology Committee sat a superintendent, sat on occasion the director of education, teachers, early childhood educators, educational assistants, and a custodian. And why was a custodian part of that table? Because that particular custodian was the robotics and coding guru in his school, and his voice was a necessary one because his school was actually leading the elementary schools in the acquisition of robotics through competition, etc. So that voice was a very, very critical voice and a welcome one. So I think I've spoken to the plan earlier being developed by external consultants. The process that was undertaken is a process that is entitled by the province of collaborative professionalism. And the process would also include a research partnership with the university. In this case, we partnered with the University of Ontario Institute of Technology, And that partnering represented a shift. I would say I'm generalizing, but it's difficult to get into a school board in the province of Ontario and do research. Generally, there are policies around that. There might be a committee around that, a research committee, or it might be the responsibility of one particular superintendent or a superintendent and director of education. It's hard. And it's hard to do it because the research or the data that's collected is data that's collected from young people. And parent consent is a part of that process. As you know, consents from employees are a part of that process. And it's not an easy journey. And in our case, we were able to move the process ahead because we had worked with UOIT, or I had worked with UOIT, and the superintendent responsible for research endorsed the approval. It worked as a partnership. It helped as well that we had a free exchange of information, including the survey that was going to be distributed. So we knew about it. We were able to provide input to that survey. It was very transparent and a very effective way of collecting data.
Thanks, Laurie. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my university. It is Canada's newest university, and it's a technology university. So we started out as a laptop university with one-to-one laptops for all students, but by now we're pretty much bring your own device. Some of our programs are fully online, and I teach in the graduate school in education, and my courses are 100% synchronous video with my graduate students. So one of the parts that the university was asked to do, and I involved, of course, my graduate students in doing this, was to look at a review of the literature and identify what were some of the major change levers that the board would want, the school district would want to look at when they were looking at renewing their technology plan. So the first change lever that we identified in our review of the literature was that learning has become much more personalized in terms of its pace, in terms of its approach, where the learners are geographically, and the nature of learning itself is changing. I talked about that at this conference last year, that we're seeing a tremendous increase in learning outside of school. And how do schools accommodate that and bring that in and actually use it toward the formal learning? There's much more of a focus in learning how to learn, on the process of learning rather than the content. And the source for this was the United States Department of Education. That's from their website. So the second major change that we identified for them, we tried to not be exhaustive in these changes, but pick key ones, is that education is becoming much more democratic. More of learning is open sourced. Millions of people study now using Wikipedia and YouTube. And an example of the democratization of education is that every 6 to 8 weeks, there are more than 10 million edits to Wikipedia, which I think is really a shining example of how we are co-creating knowledge in this era. So the third major change that we identified for the district was the growth of blended learning, where students can learn from anywhere. And this change in blended learning, making learning available for students who can't come to school for whatever reason, is changing the role of the teacher, and is also a driving force behind inquiry learning. So those were the changes that we identified. We just picked 3 major changes that we identified for the school district, but we also told them that the research in the United States, where most of this has happened, research with school administrators, indicates that the changes are not happening in American classrooms to the degree that some would hope that change is happening. For example, the majority of American school district administrators believe that they should only allow students to go on a list of websites. This is Cheryl Lemke's research with 3,000 school administrators. The majority of school districts report that they have not implemented Web 2.0, so the interactivity of the students interacting with people online has not happened. And 38% of school districts are beginning to use online technology for more participatory decision making. That's like email and Google Classrooms and so on within the district. And that's Lemke's research from last year. No, sorry.
A little more about the guiding policy framework, collaborative professionalism. Collaborative professionalism values the voices of all. It encourages reflection, the sharing of ideas, formal and informal leadership in learning, and building trusting and supportive environments. And this is an excerpt from the memo. So this is a Ministry of Education policy memo, memo number 159 on collaborative professionalism. This is policy in the province of Ontario. Building, and this is a quote, building a shared understanding of collaborative professionalism and articulating a commitment to working together to further improve student achievement and well-being of both students and staff. And the Leveraging Technology Committee that was established is a reflection of that. It represented 2 affiliates, 2 unions, teachers union and CUPE union, OECTA in our school board, and CUPE for support staff. And partnerships were made. There was a lot of sharing of ideas, a lot of grassroots and democratic processes shaping change, and the co-creation of learning. And roughly our new TELP comes in at about 4 pages, off from 105 originally. And it's deliberate, it's intentional. It now reflects the board improvement plan for student achievement and well-being. Because something we tend to do well in education is to plan, and we do pretty good work in acting, but where we struggle is in assessing or monitoring and determining how well the planning and the acting are going. And so that has been a real focus for us. And coming up with a framework, coming up with a process that allowed us to do it more critically was important to us. So the committee, the TELP, met 5 times during the school year, and 1 meeting was virtual. It was through Adobe Connect, the platform Adobe Connect. And it was fraught with the usual startups using that sort of platform. We were running in different rooms, making sure we were all up and running, but we were committed to doing it. We wanted to see what it looked like. We evaluated the previous technology plan, and that was no easy feat because it came in at 105 pages, and because we went through bullet by bullet the recommendations and where we stood. The other challenge to that was the language had changed. What was meaningful 5 years before was no longer a term that we used, so we weren't necessarily understanding what the particular term meant 5 years later because it was called something else. It was called a learning commons instead of a 21st century library, for example. And we had 5 additional areas for research and investigation: BYOD and blended, e-learning, the learning commons, privacy, security, and parental communication, and pedagogical documentation, and robotics and coding. And each one of those was broken down into a subcommittee. A Google survey was sent to 900 teachers, and because we had representation from the union, the survey was well received. It was delivered on a professional activity day, and approximately 400 teachers completed it. And the survey assessed understandings of digital privacy. It assessed as well the teachers' understanding of their role and supervision, the supervision of students in online environments. And it helped us understand the key priorities for teachers. Do you want to speak to the research?
Sure. Sorry, I forgot to click. So as part of this partnership that we were working on with the school district, actually one of my graduate students designed the first prototype of the survey that was going to be used. And then we took it to the committee, and then the committee decided what questions they really wanted answers to. And so it was a back and forth kind of process in the design of the survey. But I'm only going to choose selected results from the Google survey, but first of all, we were very happy with the response rate of 43%. The representation of people who answered, teachers who answered the survey, was very, very close to how they are represented in the board. So we looked at that. We looked at how many teachers were in each of the different districts. It's a fairly large school board. So we looked at that. So we were quite happy that the results were representative. One of the things that the central district, the superintendent, may not know is how much technology is actually in use in classrooms. Because the technology can go to the school, you don't know if it's being used. And also now, students and teachers are bringing in their own technology into the classrooms. So this question was really helpful to the committee in terms of its findings. And it was surprising to most of us that most teachers were using at least 4 different devices in their classrooms. But the teachers indicated overall, but not by a giant margin, that they wanted more technology. They wanted more access to technology. And they talked about some of the things that we've heard before about if the computers are in a lab, then they can't get at them. And some of that has already been well documented in the research. What was another surprise was that moving to bring your own device was a stronger direction. The teachers saw that as a stronger direction they wanted to go than moving to one-to-one, one computer for each student. So we also did, the student who designed the survey also asked for some qualitative responses. So questions were asked of the teachers such as, do you understand digital privacy? Would you tell us how you understand digital privacy? So we had great response, again, more than 300 responses on this. And the overall findings from the data analysis were the teachers felt they had a duty of care. They really felt they needed to protect students. But the teachers really did not understand digital privacy, what it is and how to protect it. And they were unsure about how to do it. The teachers would say, well, hopefully there's a policy for that. And most of the teachers indicated that they wanted more help from the school district in how to protect student privacy. And Laurie and I gave a presentation this morning on digital privacy, and the findings in the school district actually matched the findings internationally from the Global Privacy Enforcement Network Sweep. I forget who was doing the final slide. You were. Oh, I was? Okay, thanks. So here are some of our findings as a result of doing this research. Districts, because they have so many people and so much experience that are gained in the school district, districts, through experience, processes, and previous consultation with experts, have amassed a degree of expertise that they can move forward on their own with their technology-enabled learning plans. But we also found that just-in-time research from the university, so they needed the research. I happen to have graduate students who were ready to do that. So these just-in-time research efforts developed through collaborative professionalism yield reliable and valid results. And we were really surprised at how the teachers took to answering the survey. And the teachers, you could tell from their comments, they believed that their comments were going somewhere and were going to make change in the district. And we made the results available immediately to the teachers. So I forget if we mentioned or not, but Laurie has set up everything, all of the work that she's done, all of her technology plan is available in Google Docs for everyone to see. And our final conclusion, school districts are in strong positions to assess, support, and innovate the work connected to technology-enabled learning with processes that come from within rather than asking for external. So thank you very much, everybody, for your attention.